Welcome to Gregorian chat.
Hello.
Sup?
Welcome to the podcast, Gregorian Chat, episode 23.
What?
Isn't that crazy?
23 weeks.
Pregnant
Yeah.
with a Gregorian baby.
And it is all about the content.
Yeah, so we're not talking about pregnancy today, but it is more of a serious topic today. So we'll just do a couple of minutes of lighthearted banterama. And,
It is real Catholic banter.
Real Catholic banter. Today's topic, well, should I say the title of today's podcast is Putting the Spotlight on Sexual Abuse in the Church. So obviously we're going to be talking about very serious topics, sexual abuse in the church. Why are we talking about this now, Dom?
Well, as you might have heard in the news more recently, Cardinal Pell, an Australian cardinal, bishop kind of guy, who's in charge of the Curia in Rome, has had a bunch of charges put up against him. And there's been a bit of a media storm, which has made it a very controversial case. So we thought we would put some talk on that. Actually.
So the first stage of this for us really was, after, should I say, you'll probably find a link below, a very well-written article by a good friend and ex-cameo on the podcast, Sam Brebner, who wrote a very good article on the whole situation. Because it's like Cardinal Pell hasn't received his trial yet, and we are eagerly awaiting that on the 26th of this month.
True.
So we just thought, well, phase 2, let's watch the movie Spotlight, which we'd heard a lot about.
Yes.
We'd heard from a lot of people, a lot of Catholics included, that it was a really good movie. So we watched it yesterday.
Yes.
So a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is about Spotlight.
Yes.
And essentially what are some of the attributes of the movie? What do they tell us about?
Yeah. So basically,
situation?
the movie's about something that happened at the beginning, in the early 2000s in Boston. And with the sexual abuse that was revealed there and how the Boston Globe covered it. In fact, it's more about how the whole of Boston reacted to this rather than the going deeply into what the actual sexual abuse.
That's right. So there are two kind of facets to the movie. One is it's a movie about journalism and about investigative journalism. So as a kind of dying practice because of the internet, it talks a lot about the art of being an investigative journalist, and the story, of course, that they're working on is about sexual abuse. So those are the two sides of the movie. I'm just going to get some milk actually, because this is caramel brownie tea from T2. Something just a little bit indulgent, but I think it needs some milk. So
Okay.
Dom is going to tell you a bit more.
Yeah, so it actually goes on about the necessity of good journalism, which is one of the things that it's made this Cardinal Pell case so controversial.
So
because,
compelling.
So it's made it so controversial because the Australian media has just gone absolutely crazy on it. And some people have said that they might not be able to have a fair trial now because of how the media's reacted to it.
That's right.
And I have to say I really enjoyed the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really good cast, I thought. So you got Michael Keaton.
Yep.
Um,
Rachel McAdams.
Yep. You got Mark Ruffalo. A bunch of other people that I've seen in so many movies, but I don't know what their names are, to be honest. But the cast really helped. And what's the guy's name? Who plays Sabretooth in Marvel?
Oh yeah, the guy who plays Sabretooth.
Wolverine's brother.
He's the editor.
Marcus something? No.
Vlad. It's Sabretooth.
His name in real life. Okay, whatever. Anyway, so good cast, which really helped. And it was interesting. We were watching a bunch of interviews kind of before we watched the movie.
Yeah.
A lot of them with Mark Ruffalo and with the real journalists and lawyers who the story was based around.
Yes.
So I think the first thing that struck me about this movie, and before we saw the movie, the first thing that struck me about the interviews is that they kind of actually seemed to be not as much of a vicious attack on the Catholic Church directly than what I was expecting. So I expected this movie was let's bring down the Catholic Church, and try and do it with the case of sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't quite what I found.
No, yeah, it was actually really like level-headed, and you see that in the acting. Like, so essentially, they're just telling the story of what happened. So it's not a massive Hollywood sensationalist kind of movie based on a true story. It is a true story of what actually happened, which means for us Catholics, it hits home really bad. Like, you hear some of the like actual abuse cases that happened. Like, there's this one scene where one of the abuse victims, who started an organization called SNAP, he told about what happened to him. And it was just like that scene in particular was really difficult to watch, because it's like, you know, this isn't, you can't just like, it's just a movie, because this actually happened.
That's right.
And you see that in the acting. There's this one scene where Mark Ruffalo's just having a go because he wants to publish this piece, but it's not the right time. And that's one of the things that's really good about the investigative journalist side of it. It's like, it's about getting the right story and hitting the right people. It's not just about. It should be. Yeah. Well, that's what it was about. So at like 3 or 4 different points, they could have published the story, but they just decided it wasn't the right time to. So that was a really good.
I thought it was. I thought it was good. So I mean, I will try not to give too many spoilers in the movie, but essentially it's the movie about how this team called Spotlight, who's like a special wing of a newspaper called the Boston Globe. Their job is to investigate stories that need a bit more time, you know, and a bit more resources to investigate. So they get basically handed the story about sexual abuse, thinking it was a smaller kind of number of priests, around 13 priests. But in fact, the more they dig into it, the more they realize, okay, certain strange things are going on in this case, and it's not just a problem in the fact that there are priests abusing children. The problem is that the church was hiding it, you know. And whether you're a lapsed Catholic or a very strong Catholic, like, that's not something that should rest easily with you. And it's actually something that was like what another main topic is the fact that like Boston is a very Catholic place, and so like. You're either, even if you're in the church, you're out the church, you were brought up in the church. That's right. And therefore you have some sort of connection with it. And so I mean, it's kind of, it's not an attack on like the Catholic Church, but it's a kind of a story saying, guys, wake up, you know, be true, be Catholic. If you know, we're called as Catholics to follow the truth, and so let's follow that. And the interesting point is like the editor that came in, the guy who plays Sabretooth he was actually Jewish, and you see, you know, at one point you see someone be like, you know, so you've got a guy who's not married, Jew from New York, editing the Boston Globe. What's that all about? And so there's a bit of like, you know, like a culture of Catholicism. As well as the actual faith. It's a really interesting movie, and trying not to give away too many spoilers, but like I suppose what we want to talk about mainly is like the effect it did have on us, and it should have, I feel, on everybody who watches it. Absolutely. You know? Yeah, well, so having seen a bit of the story, and so basically the journalists start building a case, as Don was saying before. They start finding out stuff about these priests who are abusing children, horrible things. But basically what they find out is, we could go public with it now, but all that's going to do is maybe convict one priest, right, in court, publicly. And then the church will just say, well, that's not enough to prove that it's an institutional thing going on, an institutional problem. And so what Spotlight team does is the guy who Michael Keaton plays, he says, no, there's not enough here. What we don't want to take down one or two priests. We want to take down the problem that's going on here, not the institution itself. Yes. But they said that we want to take down the system, is the words they use. I don't know how I feel about that. But, but basically they want to get rid of the loopholes that are going on, because they're all lapsed Catholics themselves. They've grown up in Boston from Catholic families, so it is still close to home to them. So the cool thing that we thought about, you know, and going back to Cardinal Pell again, because what you haven't seen in his case is exactly this, you know, kind of prudence and thinking, no, we shouldn't publish that story because that might not be all the facts. You know, we should wait. and actually see if it builds into a bigger case, and then have a trial. Maybe you disagree with us on whether or not they actually have done that, but it seems that there's been a lot of defamation that's gone on before Cardinal Pell's trial, which would make it hard, whether or not he is guilty. It'll make it hard for him to be proven innocent, really.
And one of the things that I really got out of this movie was like a call to action. A phrase that I learnt when I was working with the Vinnies when I was at university, St. Vincent de Paul group, was their slogan was turning concern into action. And I think there was a lot, what came out of this movie is like what was happening in Boston. There was a lot of people turning a blind eye because what's the church, or like, oh, it's a cardinal. Of course, I'll do this one thing for you. I ask no questions. But like we're all human, and we all have our suspicions. It's like this doesn't sound quite right. So when you have that concern, you're like, okay, I need to do something about this. Because, if you don't do anything about it,
That's right. Yeah.
You just we're called in like the confessio is like to confess all the things that I've done and the things that I've failed to do.
Exactly.
And it's a massive part of our Catholic faith, and sometimes we can get so wrapped up in the religion and the loyalty to that religion that we lose a bit of like maybe objectivity, and realizing that we are just people, and that goes for priests. That goes for cardinals as well. It's like you can be a priest and you can be a really nice guy, but you can also be a priest and like be a bit of an idiot. And I think we shouldn't be afraid to call out each other.
That's right. Yeah.
As brothers and sisters in Christ.
And I guess a lot of what was happening in Boston with the church being so important was that priests were being put on a pedestal. The clergy were being put to like on a scale of like untouchable, unquestionable in terms of being held accountable, and that is not the way it should be, clearly. And even like if you've been reading the news for the last couple of weeks, there's been some pretty shocking stuff that's been happening in the Vatican. And as like committed Catholics, it's not easy to hear this stuff.
No.
And I don't think our immediate reaction should be, oh man, bad stuff is happening in the Vatican. Oh, corruption, they, the Vatican should be basically taken down, taken apart. It can be very tempting to despair about these kinds of things. Yeah. So the question, I guess, in this podcast is like, what is kind of like a reasonable reaction to it as a young Catholic? How do we make sense of it? But more importantly, how do we actually respond to it? Like, how do we turn that concern into some kind of action?
And I think one of the one key that I would give as a point of advice is to have the correct attitude, and that's both not one of making the church godlike, but then also the opposite of that is not making it devil-like. So we see like as we see in this movie, a lot of the people like lawyers, journalists, people who are the good people, they're like, oh no, we can't touch the church because it's the church, that's God's institution, so we'll just let them do what they do and we'll do what we do. And you kind of like self-absolution. It's like, I'm not involved, and that's a bad thing, because these are still ultimately people that were born in the fall. We're all fallen people, so let's be aware of that. However, then there's the reaction, which I think is kind of a bit what's happened with the Cardinal Pell case, is like the church is the devil. All right, he's a cardinal, he was around at the time, he must have done it, let's defame him. Yeah. And therefore you haven't given him a fair chance. And by a fair chance, I don't mean a fair chance of being proven innocent. I mean a fair chance of finding the right answer. Yeah. Because no Catholic you meet will say that, oh yeah, the abuse case, they're not really a big thing. It's like, I was watching a video by Bishop Barron. He says it's the worst thing in the history of the church to ever happened. And it is.
Well, in the last century, I think he said in the last decade,
the last century at least. But like, this is one of the worst things that has happened in our history, and we're not trying to say it's okay. It's not okay, but neither is just lynch mobbing. Yeah.
So it's one of the kind of, I guess, more poignant parts in the movie was when Michael Keaton's character comes to a lawyer that he wants to help, with the case. So he needs this lawyer to confirm the names of 87 priests who have been convicted, or that should be convicted.
Yeah.
And kind of, he comes, they're old school friends, right? And so he's like, we can't just let this slide. And I won't give away the twist here, but he's like, Michael Keaton's like, we can't let this slide. And he's talking about that quote that both Dom and I remember quite well from the movie. And he said, if it takes a village to raise a child, then it surely takes a village to abuse one. And the mentality there is, it's like, okay, we can't just kind of like take the good from the things that we've set up and not accept some of the bad things that are coming from it as well. Like it can be easy to say, oh no, the church is, because the church is so holy and set up by God and Christ and stuff, that of course it's not going to be corrupt and things like that. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the church is obviously, Jesus has set it up, but it consists of human beings. Right?
Yes, and it doesn't rely on one person to make sure everything's right. We're all called to action. We're all called to love. We're all called to be priestly, kingly, and everything else we're baptized as. And so, in that case, it's sort of like if you see someone vulnerable, and now this could be a child, it could be an elderly person. We have like the euthanasia debate that's coming up in the government in New Zealand. Is like, it'll take the whole country to make this happen.
That's right.
So what role have I played? Have I protected these people?
That's right. And thinking about the sexual abuse thing, and it's like, okay, well, if it's a problem now in the church, and if everyone needs to do their bit, then what can we do? Okay, so the first thing, I guess, coming from that point we were just mentioning is, well, we need to keep our eyes open, right? We can't be naive. We need to actually be aware. We can't be indifferent to it either, because indifference is
yes. Yeah.
And the second thing I'd say is that we shouldn't be afraid either. Like, we shouldn't be seeing stories like this and start kind of clinching in fear because of what's going to happen to the church. It can be easy to kind of become paralyzed at the fact that the church is going through scandal.
Yes.
And therefore to kind of think, like a lot of people have done through history, right? They see something go wrong in the church and they immediately turn to, okay, nah, this can't be of God, I'm going to be an atheist now or something, right?
Yes.
Or even fear that, it's like everything they've ever known and loved about religion is falling apart.
Yes.
Like, it's important not to be afraid. Fear of God is where it should be.
Yeah, and like, it's almost as though, like, if there was a priest that's found to have been an abuser and is put to punish, that's a success for Catholicism, because it's been purged of this evil. Yeah. And whereas at the same time, if this guy's proven innocent, it's still a good thing, because we want to find their answer. We want justice first and foremost, and I think that should be that is a call to courage against our own say like, oh, he's a priest though, but
our own bias.
So against our own bias, but it's also a call to prudence, in that it's like, just because you see someone acting funny doesn't mean they're evil. There could be a legitimate reason. So
looking forward to the, looking ahead, I should say, to this Cardinal Pell case, like, we need to keep that in mind when the trial goes on, and if, maybe he was guilty, and when if that is the verdict that they come to, and there's solid evidence and whatever, then it's like, okay, well, we need to see that as, it's unfortunate that he is guilty.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, if he is, if it is solved in this way, then, like you said, that is a part of me, it should be a victory for the Catholic Church to kind of say, okay, no, we're doing our best to help the church from within. We're not going to leave it and shout at it and throw things at it from without,
Yeah.
It's our duty to really come together more, I think, as Catholics, and be proud of our faith at this time, to say, no, that's not, this is good, like, that's not what we stand for.
And so, like, praying for justice and looking for justice properly. Yeah. I recommend you watch the Spotlight video, because it does give you a lot of good insight into how to tackle this, but it is incredibly challenging to watch.
It is really hard to watch, but that's pretty much all we got time for today. We're going to be doing probably two or three more, maybe. One or two more, sorry. On this topic. So I guess probably closer to around Cardinal Pell's trial. Just something really interesting that we want to keep you guys, kind of in the loop about. And this caramel brownie tea was quite nice, quite indulgent.
Nice. Yes, a little bit. A little bit good.
Yeah, good with some milk.
Okay.
But keep in the loop and keep Catholic.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
And stay blessed. And just comment anything you think we should talk about, maybe in the podcast on just below. And,
Yeah. Got any ideas?
God bless.
Cheers to you.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe.
Make sure that you check us out on our YouTube channel, Auckland Catholic Tertiary Chaplaincy.
You can also find us on Facebook, Facebook.com/The Chaplains.
And our Instagram account, which is Auckland Catholic Chaplaincy.
We're also now on iTunes. Just search up Gregorian Chat.
Boom.
That's right.
Thanks for listening.
God bless.